The chandeliers in the grand ballroom of the mansion on Forsyth Park glowed like 100 tiny suns, casting golden light across the sea of tables draped in ivory linens. The air carried the sweet scent of roses, mingling with the soft hum of violins and the clink of champagne glasses. I sat at the table in the farthest corner, tucked away behind a towering floral arrangement, feeling like a forgotten rose in an overgrown garden. My navy dress, simple but tailored to perfection, felt out of place among the glittering gowns and tuxedos. At 60, I'd learned that elegance doesn't shout, it whispers. But tonight, no one seemed to hear. I was Nelly Mitchell, and I hadn't been back to Savannah, Georgia, in over 30 years. Not since I left at 18, with 2 suitcases and a heart full of bruises. Tonight was my sister Sarah's wedding, and I'd come because she'd asked me to, her email landing in my old inbox like a ghost from the past. As I sipped my water, I caught the pitying glances from distant cousins and old family friends. Their eyes said they thought I was a failure, a nobody. Little did they know. The speeches had just begun when Michael, the groom, took the microphone. He was handsome, with a warm smile, and a tech bro energy that felt out of place in this old Southern ballroom. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate Sarah and me," he said, his voice echoing. The crowd clapped, but I stayed still, my hands folded in my lap. Then, someone from the back shouted, "What about Nelly? Let her say something." My heart stopped. Every eye turned to me. Sarah, radiant in her white gown, froze at the head table. My nephew, David Jr., sitting nearby with his wife, Emily, looked uncomfortable. Emily, in her sparkling gold dress, smirked and whispered something to Sarah. My sister's face tightened, but her new husband, Michael, grinned. "Of course, Nelly, come on up." I stood, smoothing my dress, and walked to the front, my heels clicking on the polished floor. The room was a blur of faces, curious, some skeptical. Michael handed me the microphone, but before I could speak, he squinted at me, his expression shifting. "Wait a minute," he said, his voice still amplified. "Are you Nelly Mitchell? The Nelly Mitchell from Mitchell Tech Solutions?" The ballroom fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the velvet carpet. I smiled, calm as a summer morning. "Yes, that's me." Michael's jaw dropped. "Oh my God, I can't believe it. You're a legend. Your database software changed how we handle enterprise data. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, you've worked with them all. I read about you in Forbes." His excitement echoed through the room, and whispers erupted like wildfire. Sarah's face drained of color. Emily's smirk vanished. My nephew looked stunned, his eyes darting between me and his wife. I took the microphone, my voice steady. "Thank you, Michael. That's kind of you. I just want to say congratulations to Sarah and Michael. May you have a lifetime of love and joy." I handed the microphone back and started toward my table, feeling the weight of every stare. As I passed the head table, Sarah's eyes met mine sharp, almost wounded. Emily leaned over to her, muttering, "Can you believe she didn't tell anyone?" I sat back down, the roses on the table casting soft shadows across my plate, but my mind wasn't here. It was drifting back to Savannah, to the house I grew up in, to the kitchen where the smell of Mama's oatmeal cookies filled the air, and to the day I walked away for good. 35 years ago, our little house in the suburbs of Savannah was a world of its own. The kitchen was the heart of it, with yellow curtains and a chipped formica table where Mama baked and Sarah, my little sister, twirled in her ballet slippers. I was 14, all elbows and dreams, hunched over a clunky computer in the corner of my room, teaching myself to code from library books. Sarah got piano lessons and dance classes, her every whim indulged. When I asked to join the free coding club at school, Mama said, "Nelly, focus on something practical, like cooking. Boys don't marry girls who tinker with machines." Sarah was the golden child, her laughter filling the house like sunlight. I was the shadow, unnoticed unless I spilled something. For her 7th birthday, Mama threw a princess-themed party in the backyard, complete with a rented castle bounce house. My birthdays? A store-bought cake if I was lucky, and a "Don't make a fuss, Nelly" from Daddy. I didn't mind too much. Coding was my escape. Lines of code were like poetry, each one a step toward a future I could build myself. But the summer I turned 18, everything changed. I'd graduated high school with honors, my heart set on college. I'd applied for scholarships, dreaming of studying computer science. One evening, Mama called me into the living room. Daddy sat in his recliner, his face stern. Sarah, 16 and radiant, hovered nearby, clutching a new charm bracelet. Nelly, Daddy said, you're an adult now. It's time you act like one. We can't afford to send you to college. Sarah's got real potential. Her piano teacher says she could go professional. We need to focus on her. Mama nodded, her voice cold. You need to move out, Nelly. Sarah needs space to focus. We can't have you freeloading here. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Move out? Where am I supposed to go? My voice cracked, but they didn't flinch. That's for you to figure out, Mama said. You've got until the end of the week. 3 days later, I stood on the porch with 2 suitcases and a backpack, rain soaking through my jacket. The rose bushes Mama loved so much drooped under the downpour, their petals scattered on the ground. I was like those roses uprooted, cast aside. But as I walked away, I promised myself I'd bloom somewhere else, somewhere they couldn't touch. Back in the ballroom, the music swelled again, pulling me to the present. The ceremony was over, and guests mingled, their laughter ringing hollow in my ears. I sipped my water, watching Sarah glide across the room in her gown, her smile as polished as the crystal chandeliers. She was 48 now, but still the spoiled girl I remembered, always needing to be the center of attention. A shadow fell over my table. Emily, my daughter-in-law, stood there, her gold dress catching the light. Her blonde hair was swept into an elaborate updo, and her diamond earrings screamed money I suspected she and David Jr. didn't have. Nelly, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. That dress is quaint. Did you borrow it? I mean, I'm sure David doesn't give you much to work with. I smiled, my fingers tracing the rim of my glass. Emily, sometimes a dress is just a dress, and sometimes it's worth more than it looks. She laughed, a sharp, grating sound. Oh, bless your heart. You're so simple. No wonder you're stuck back here in the corner. She glanced at Sarah, who was approaching, and added, Right, Sarah? Nelly's always been the plain one. Sarah joined us, her perfume overwhelming. She looked me up and down, her lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Nelly, you look like yourself. Simple, like always. But I'm glad you're here. Maybe you'll see how successful people celebrate. The words stung, but I kept my face neutral. I'd learned long ago not to let Sarah's barbs draw blood. Congratulations, Sarah, I said. You look beautiful. I'm happy for you. Sarah's smile faltered, as if my calmness unnerved her. Before she could respond, Emily cut in. Come on, Sarah, let's get you to the head table. That's where the important people sit. They walked away, their laughter trailing like a bitter aftertaste. Aunt Helen, my great-aunt, leaned over from the next chair. Her silver hair was pinned neatly, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity. Nelly, dear, I had no idea you were so successful. Your sister told everyone you were struggling, living in some rundown apartment, barely scraping by. I shook my head, a wry smile tugging at my lips. People say a lot of things, Aunt Helen. Doesn't make them true. The truth was, I owned a tech company worth millions. My house in San Francisco overlooked the bay, and my software had reshaped how corporations manage data. But my family? They'd painted me as a failure, a nobody. And I'd let them, because sometimes silence is the loudest response. As the evening wore on, more relatives approached, their pity replaced by awkward curiosity. My cousin Jennifer, now in her 50s, gushed, Nelly, why didn't you tell us? We thought you were, well, you know. Uncle Bob, his hair gone gray, clapped my shoulder. Didn't expect you to turn out like this, kiddo. Good for you. I nodded, polite but distant, my mind elsewhere. I thought of my kitchen in San Francisco, where the morning light poured through the windows and the smell of chamomile tea filled the air. It was my sanctuary, a place where I could sit alone and wonder if I'd made the right choice all those years ago. Had I been too hard cutting my family off, or had I just been protecting the garden of my heart? The ballroom glowed, but I felt cold, like a rose left out in the frost. Michael's recognition had changed everything, but it hadn't healed the old wounds. I looked at Sarah, laughing with her new husband, and Emily, whispering to David Jr. They thought they knew me. They thought I was nothing. But I was Nelly Mitchell, and I'd built my own world, petal by petal. If my story has touched your heart, I hope you'll join me for more. Subscribe to our channel to hear stories of resilience and love, and share in the comments. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Your thoughts mean the world to me. The morning after Sarah's wedding, I woke to the soft hum of San Francisco fog outside my window. My house in the hills was quiet, the kind of quiet that wraps around you like a warm quilt. I padded to the kitchen, my bare feet cool against the hardwood, and put the kettle on. The scent of chamomile tea rose as I stood by the counter, staring at the roses in a vase on the table. They were starting to wilt, their petals curling at the edges, and I couldn't help but think of myself still blooming, but carrying scars no one could see. The wedding had left me raw. Michael's recognition, the shocked faces, Emily's sharp tongue-eye, all churned in my mind like a storm over the savannah marshes. I'd built a life most people only dreamed of, but sitting at that back table, I'd felt like the 18-year-old girl who'd been told she wasn't enough. As the kettle whistled, I wondered if I'd been too quick to walk away all those years ago. Could I have tried harder to mend things? Or was I right to protect the garden of my heart? My thoughts drifted to California, to the years when I was just Nelly, not Nelly Mitchell, tech legend. Those years had shaped me, but they'd also left wounds that never quite healed. In the early 90s, I landed in Berkeley with a full scholarship and a fire in my belly. The campus was alive with ideas, but I was a fish out of water, juggling 2 part-time jobs waitressing at a diner and shelving books at the library. My dorm room was a shoebox, with a creaky bed and a desk where I'd code late into the night, the glow of my ancient PC, my only company. Those lines of code were my lifeline, each one a brick in the foundation of a new life. I was 20 when I met David in an advanced programming class. He was lanky, with a quick laugh and a mind as sharp as mine. We'd stay up late in the computer lab debugging code and dreaming of building something big. Nelly, he'd say, his eyes bright, "We're gonna change the world." I believed him, not because I thought we could, but because he made me feel like I mattered. We married right after graduation, a simple courthouse ceremony with a handful of friends. I took his last name, Mitchell, and we moved to Silicon Valley, 2 kids with big dreams and empty pockets. By day, we worked grunt jobs at tech startups. By night, we built our own software database management system that could streamline operations for massive corporations. We poured everything into it, skipping dinners out, wearing secondhand clothes, living on hope and instant noodles. 2 years later, we pitched it to IBM. I'll never forget the boardroom in San Jose, the executives in their crisp suits, and David squeezing my hand under the table. When they offered us $12 million, I thought I'd misheard. $12 million. We were 25, and our lives had changed overnight. But success didn't fill the hole my family had left. I'd lie awake at night, wondering if Mama ever regretted kicking me out, if Sarah missed the sister who used to braid her hair. I could have called, could have gone back to Savannah, but the hurt was too deep. It was like a scar, tough and unyielding, keeping me from reaching out. David understood. He'd hold me and say, "You're enough, Nelly. You've always been enough." But even his love couldn't erase the past. Our company, Mitchell Tech Solutions, grew faster than we'd imagined. We hired teams, took on clients like Google and Microsoft, and watched our net worth climb into the tens of millions. But the more we focused on the business, the less we focused on each other. By our 8th anniversary, we were better partners than spouses. The divorce was amicable, our assets split evenly. David and I stayed friends, running the company together, but I never remarried. My heart had been through too many storms to risk another. The phone rang, snapping me back to the present. I glanced at the screen, Emily. My daughter-in-law's name felt like a splinter under my skin. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was syrupy, the kind of sweet that hides a bitter aftertaste. "Nelly, hi, it's Emily. I just wanted to say I'm so sorry about the wedding. I had no idea who you were. Well, I mean what you've done. Can we talk, maybe grab coffee? Call me back, okay?" I deleted the message. Emily's apology wasn't about regret, it was about dollar signs. I'd seen it in her eyes at the wedding, the way they lit up when Michael mentioned my name. She thought I was her ticket to something, maybe a loan, maybe a handout, but I wasn't a bank, and I wasn't a fool. Emily had never been kind to me. When David Jr., my only child, married her 5 years ago, I'd hoped we'd be close. I dreamed of baking cookies with her in my kitchen, sharing stories over tea. Instead, she'd pushed me away. She'd roll her eyes when I offered to cook for them, saying, "Nelly, nobody eats homemade anymore, we order takeout." She'd excluded me from my grandson's birthday parties, claiming they were just for close family. And once, when I suggested she learn to budget, she'd snapped, "You're so out of touch. Not everyone lives off their son's scraps." Scraps. As if David Jr. supported me. My son was a good man, kind but spineless when it came to Emily. He'd apologize for her, saying, "She doesn't mean it, Mom." But I knew better. Emily saw me as a relic, a burden. And I'd let her, because I didn't need her approval. But sitting in my kitchen, the chamomile tea gone cold, I felt a pang of loneliness. I'd built an empire, but I ate most of my meals alone. I thought of my childhood kitchen in Savannah, with its yellow curtains and the smell of Mama's cookies. I used to sit at the table, doing homework while Sarah practiced piano in the next room. Mama would hum as she baked, but her smiles were always for Sarah. I'd watch her braid Sarah's hair, her fingers gentle, and wish she'd look at me that way. That kitchen was where I'd learned to be invisible, to keep my dreams small so they wouldn't get in anyone's way. My laptop chimed with an email, pulling me from the past. It was from Sarah, the subject line stark, "We need to talk." My stomach twisted, but I opened it. "Nelly, I've done some digging, and I know you're worth millions. Meanwhile, we're drowning. The wedding cost us $100,000, and Michael and I took out a loan we can't pay back. You could help us. For you it's nothing, but for us it's everything. We're family, Nelly. Family helps family. Please, let's talk." I stared at the screen, my tea forgotten. Sarah's words weren't a plea, they were a demand, wrapped in the guise of family ties. She hadn't mentioned the wedding, her cruel words, or the years she'd ignored me. She hadn't even asked how I was, just money. Always money. I thought of Sarah as a child, her pigtails bouncing as we ran through Mama's rose garden. We'd pick petals and make wishes, giggling under the summer sun. Once she'd hugged me and said, "You're the best sister ever." But that girl was gone by the time she was 16, replaced by someone who basked in Mama's praise and saw me as competition. I'd found a letter from her in my college mailbox, a year after I left Savannah. "I'm sorry, Nelly. I didn't mean for you to go. But you left and I don't know what to do." I'd waited for her to call, to show up, but she never did. The letter was all I had, and even that felt hollow. I closed the laptop, my heart heavy. Sarah's email was a mirror, reflecting the same selfishness I'd seen at the wedding. But it also stirred something else, question I couldn't shake. Was I holding on to the past too tightly? Mama had been cold, but she'd taught me to forgive, to keep the door open even when it hurt. Could I do that for Sarah? For Emily? Or was I just tending a garden full of weeds, hoping they'd turn into roses? I stood and walked to the window, the fog rolling over the bay like a whisper. My life was full me company, my friends, my garden, but there was an emptiness I couldn't name. I'd spent decades proving I was enough, but now, at 60, I wondered if I could let go of the hurt without losing myself. The roses on my table drooped, their petals falling one by one, and I knew I had a choice. Pull out the weeds or let them grow. The San Francisco sunset painted the sky in shades of peach and gold, its light spilling through my living room window and warming the hardwood floor. I stood by the coffee table, arranging a vase of fresh roses I'd cut from my garden that morning. Their scent was soft, like a memory of summer, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. Sarah's email, with its bold demand for money, still lingered in my mind, as did Emily's fake apology. But I was done letting their words define me. At 60, I'd learned that the only garden worth tending was the one inside my heart. The wedding had been a mirror, showing me the faces of a family I'd tried to forget. Sarah's cruelty, Emily's greed, the pitying looks from relatives, they'd stirred old wounds, but they'd also reminded me of who I was. Nelly Mitchell, the girl who'd built an empire from nothing, the woman who'd chosen herself when no one else would. As I adjusted the roses, I heard the doorbell chime, a gentle sound that pulled me from my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone, but life, I'd found, had a way of surprising you. I opened the door to find Emily and David Jr. standing on my porch. Emily's usual polish was gone, her hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. David Jr., my son, looked tired. His shoulders slumped under the weight of something unspoken. "Mom," he said, his voice soft. "Can we come in?" I nodded, stepping aside. "Of course, honey. Come sit." We settled in the living room, the sunset casting long shadows across the cream-colored sofa. Emily clutched her purse, her knuckles white, and I braced myself for another request, another attempt to dig into my wallet, but David spoke first. "Mom, I owe you an apology," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "I've let Emily treat you badly for too long. I should have stood up for you, but I didn't. I'm so sorry." I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "David, you're my son. I'll always love you, no matter what." My voice was steady, but inside I felt a crack in the wall I'd built around my heart. Emily cleared her throat, her voice shaky. "Nelly, I was awful to you. At the wedding, before that, all of it. I thought you were just some old lady living off David's paycheck. I didn't know who you were. And when I found out, I only cared about what you could give us." She looked down, a tear slipping onto her cheek. "We're in debt, bad. I wanted you to bail us out, but I see now how wrong I was." Oh. I studied her, the woman who dismissed me, mocked me, shut me out of my grandson's life. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave, to keep her weeds out of my garden. But another part, the part that remembered Mama's forgiveness, even when I didn't deserve it, saw something else. Emily wasn't just greedy. She was scared, lost in a life she couldn't afford to live. "Emily," I said, my tone firm but kind. "Money doesn't fix what's broken. You've hurt me, yes, but I'm not here to keep score. If you want my respect, earn it. Not with apologies, but with actions." I stood and walked to my bookshelf, pulling out a worn copy of The Gifts of Imperfection. I handed it to her. "Start here. It's not money, but it's worth more than you think." Emily took the book, her hands trembling. "I don't know if I can change, Nelly, but I want to try." David Jr. put his arm around her, his eyes bright with something like hope. "We'll figure it out, Mom, together." As they left, I watched them walk down the path, the sunset framing them like a painting. I didn't know if Emily would change, but I'd given her a seed. Whether it grew was up to her. 2 days later, I was in my garden, pruning the rose bushes, when I heard a car pull into the driveway. The clippers paused in my hand as Sarah stepped out, her navy coat a stark contrast to the vibrant green of my lawn. She looked older than she had at the wedding, her face etched with worry. I hadn't responded to her email, hadn't planned to, but here she was, uninvited, like a storm blowing in from the past. "Nelly," she called, her voice hesitant. "Can we talk?" I wiped my hands on my apron and gestured to the patio table. "Sit, I'll make some tea." Inside, I filled the kettle, my mind racing. Sarah had always been the golden child, the one Mama and Daddy poured their love into. But now, sitting across from her, I saw a woman carrying her own burdens. She spoke first, her words tumbling out. "I was jealous of you, Nelly, always was. You left, and you made something of yourself without anyone's help. I stayed, and all I did was try to be what Mama wanted. The perfect daughter, the perfect wife. But it's never enough." She paused, her eyes glistening. "The wedding loan, it's crushing us. I thought you owed me, because you got out, and I didn't." I sipped my tea, the chamomile soothing my nerves. "Sarah, you think I got out because I was lucky? I got out because I had no choice. Mama and Daddy threw me away and you let them. You could have called, written, anything. But you didn't." "Huh." She flinched, her hands twisting in her lap. "I know. I was scared. I thought if I reached out, I'd lose their love too. I'm sorry, Nelly. I don't deserve your help, but I'm asking anyway." I looked at her, the sister I'd once loved, the girl who'd picked rose petals with me in Mama's garden. I wanted to hate her, to tell her she'd made her bed. But I remembered Mama's kitchen, the way she'd forgive Daddy's tempers, my tantrums, even Sarah's selfishness. Forgiveness wasn't weakness, it was strength, the kind that let you bloom again. "Sarah," I said, "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to let go. But I'm not paying your debts. You need to find your own way, like I did. You've got light in you, even if you've dimmed it. Find it again." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know how, but I'll try. We sat in silence, the roses swaying in the breeze, until she stood to leave. At the gate, she turned back. "You're the strongest person I know, Nelly. I wish I'd seen it sooner." As her car disappeared, I felt lighter, like a petal falling from a rose, leaving the flower whole. I'd forgiven Sarah, not for her, but for me. My garden was mine again, free of her weeds. That weekend, I hosted a dinner in my dining room, the table set with Mama's old china, the one thing I'd kept from Savannah. The guests were my chosen family: Lila, my best friend from college, who'd seen me through every storm; Tom, my company's CFO, who called me boss with a wink; and David Jr., who'd come alone, his smile brighter than I'd seen in years. The air was thick with the scent of roasted chicken and apple pie, and laughter filled the room like music. As we ate, I looked around, my heart full. This was family, not the one I'd been born into, but the one I'd built. David Jr. raised his glass. "To Mom, the strongest woman I know." Everyone cheered, and I blinked back tears, not of sadness, but of joy. Later, I stepped into my garden, the stars twinkling above. The roses glowed under the moonlight, their petals soft and resilient. I thought of Mama, of the kitchen where I'd learned to be invisible, and of the years I'd spent proving I wasn't. At 60, I'd finally learned the truth. You don't need anyone's permission to bloom. You don't need their love to be worthy. You just need your own. I knelt to water the roses, the cool earth grounding me. The past was a shadow, but it couldn't dim my light. I was Nelly Mitchell, and I was enough, always had been, always would be. The garden of my heart was in full bloom, and no one could take that away. My story ends here, but yours is still unfolding. If these words resonated with you, subscribe to our channel for more tales of courage and love. In the comments, share a moment when you stood up for yourself. What did it teach you? Your stories light up my world, just like these roses light up my garden.